Blackmagic Design has once again blown past other camera companies when it comes to video with the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. The Pocket 4K was already a game changer for affordable high-quality video, and the new model has a larger sensor and supports 12-bit RAW at an astonishing 6K resolution. That kills every other mirrorless video pretender, including Panasonic's vaunted S1H, and all that for just $2,495. To be sure, the Pocket 6K is not for photographers and offers no continuous autofocus or other features we expect to see on mirrorless cameras. On top of that, it has a smaller sensor than some of the other full-frame mirrorless cameras that we've been swooning over lately. Still, if you have designs on becoming a filmmaker, it's incredible that you can buy a pro-level cinema camera like this for so little money. To see if it can measure up in the real world to what it does on paper, I took it out for a spin around Paris. The Pocket 6K has the same body as the 4K model, with the same plastic construction, button layout, battery size, and rear display. There's one big visible difference though. It now packs a Canon EF rather than a micro four thirds lens mount, which is wider and farther from the sensor. That gives it a bigger nose, reducing the compactness compared to the 4K model, which was already barely pocket-sized. The sensor is also bigger. Where the Pocket 4K had a micro four thirds sensor, the 6K version has a bigger Super 35 sensor that's just slightly smaller than the APS-C sensor on a mid-range Canon DSLR. That's good news because Canon EF lenses are easy to find, and a bigger sensor means a more cinematic look and shallower depth of field. For a cinema-grade camera, the Pocket 6K is surprisingly easy to use. Blackmagic's touchscreen-driven menu system is very visual and intuitive. I say it every time, but mainstream camera makers like Sony and Canon should be taking notes. However, there are none of the perks you'll find on a regular mirrorless camera. There's only a crude autofocus system and no in-body stabilization. This camera is also not for vloggers due to the lack of a flip-around screen and lack of autofocus. To prove my point about the excellent ergonomics of this camera, I'm going to quickly set it up and show you how to shoot with it using just the menu system alone. So first off, we're going to turn the camera on, and right away you can see that it's not exactly as quick as your average DSLR or mirrorless camera. So right away I want to go in and make sure that I'm recording to the right image format, whether that be Blackmagic RAW or ProRes. And as you can see, when you're in Blackmagic RAW, you can't actually select 4K, and where you're in ProRes, you can't select 6K. So that's a bit of a weird thing they did, but that's how it works. Since we're shooting with a 6K camera, of course I want to shoot in 6K, so I'm going to make sure that I select that. And then I'm going to go into and select which type of card I want to record to. In this case, I want to record to the CFast card. The battery life isn't great, so I'm going to choose about 50% brightness for the monitor. If it's really bright outside and you really need more brightness, you can of course turn it up, but then you'll lose battery life. And then I can go to my audio setup, and as you can see, you've got two separate channels. So I've got a 3.5mm input, and I've also got an XLR input, and you can use both of those channels at the same time for backup or for stereo. Or you can use the camera mic, which is very high quality compared to a lot of other cameras I've tested. All the other settings are fine, so now I'm ready to go in and start shooting. Just turn off the menu, and now you can see it's easy for me to change things like the shutter angle just by tapping on it from the screen. I can change the setting there. Easy to change aperture, color temperature, exposure, and all the other settings. If you want, you can also use the buttons, but honestly I find the menu system to be so easy to use that I mostly stick with that. You're probably here for the 6K, and yes, it's pretty sweet. Few producers will be publishing humongous 6K 22.1 megapixel per frame videos just yet, but that's not the point. What it gives you is the ability to change the framing of a shot and deliver uncannily sharp 4K and 1080p videos. Despite everyone cooing over full-frame sensors lately, the fact is that for many video shooters, full-frame is actually too big. Most Hollywood films are shot on smaller Super 35 sensors, and that's exactly the size of the sensor on the Pocket 6K. Super 35 will still yield shallow depth of field with a fast lens, but won't be so shallow that you can't keep your actor's eyes in focus. At the same time, Blackmagic is once again using a so-called dual ISO sensor with sweet spots at ISO 400 and 3200. The camera has a separate circuit for high ISO recording which kicks in at ISO 1250 and means you should get video with less noise even in low light. While testing, I was able to get clean shots at up to ISO 6400, and footage was usable up to ISO 12800. Beyond that, you're going to be looking at some pretty grainy footage. Editing this footage afterwards was surprisingly seamless. Using a fast $3,000 Origin laptop with an NVIDIA RTX 2080 GPU, I was able to edit in 6K RAW without any problems. I used Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve 16.1, which you'll pretty much need to edit 6K RAW, but the paid version is included for free with the camera. The image quality speaks for itself. Shooting in RAW mode lets you grade footage as if you were shooting RAW photos in Lightroom, letting you extract tons of detail from shadows and highlights. The final footage, when downsized to 4K, is as sharp as you probably imagine, much more than the Pocket 4K. At the same time, colors are natural and rich. Once again, I'm in awe that Blackmagic would create a camera like this, not just because it's a good product, but because it's so niche. Don't go in with the wrong expectations though. This is mostly a manual camera in terms of exposure and autofocus settings, and it lacks a fully articulating screen. If you expect it to be like a Sony a7 III, you're going to be frustrated. If, on the other hand, you're an aspiring filmmaker on a budget, you could use the Pocket 4K to shoot on the cheap and then deliver the final film to any festival, in my opinion. For $2,495, that's a pretty irresistible prospect.